If you go on Google right now and search for the easiest Schengen visas to actually get a visa from, you're going to be seeing countries like Iceland, Lithuania, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Slovakia, Portugal, Bulgaria, Romania. These are all Schengen countries that are not well known, but there's a problem with this data. And in today's video, we're actually going to be trying to confirm exactly which Schengen visas are the easiest to get visas from. Is this correct or not? That's a question I'm going to be answering in today's video. So if you're a first-time traveler, you are trying to apply for a Schengen visa, and you're looking for a country in the Schengen area that has a very high chance of getting your visa approved for you, this is the right video for you guys to watch, because I'm going to be leaving no stone unturned. But here's the thing. If you actually go into Google right now and dig deeper, you're going to be seeing the fact that there's a whole lot of websites, blogs, that's going to tell you that countries like Latvia or Iceland, all of these countries are the easiest Schengen visas to actually get. But there's a problem with that data, and this is the problem. If 100 persons applies for an Iceland visa in a month, and 90 of them get approved, that's a 90% approval rating. So if 1,000 persons applies to visit France in the same month, and France approves 400 of this visa application, that's a 40% approval rating, right? And this is the problem, because data is going to tell us that Iceland has a 90% approval rating, while France has a 40% approval rating. And by this explanation alone, you would think that you have a high chance of getting your visa approved when you apply to Iceland, as opposed to applying for a French Schengen visa. And that's the problem with this data. So this data does not tell you the whole truth, but I'm going to be telling you the whole truth in this particular video. So again, it's important that you sit back, relax, and let's actually look at this topic with real data. You see, the first time I applied for a Schengen visa, I thought to myself and I said, which country should I apply to? I came on Google and actually searched for it on Google, and I saw all of these: Iceland, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, all of these not so well-known Schengen countries. But I asked myself a question. Everybody I know that have been to Schengen countries, it's either they're applying to France, Spain, Italy, Portugal, Germany, the well-known countries, Switzerland, Denmark, all of these countries, So I asked myself this question: why is it that almost everybody I know applies to visit France and all of these other countries, and not Iceland and Latvia and all of these other Schengen countries? Why? There has to be a reason. So I called some of these people who are actually my cousins and my friends, and I said, I want to apply for a Schengen visa. And everybody was saying France, 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 right? Because they have all applied to France and they traveled through France. So here's the truth. A country like France, Italy, Spain, Portugal is more likely to approve your visa as a first-time traveler, as opposed to Iceland, Latvia, and Lithuania, Estonia, all of these other countries. And I'm going to be telling you why as we proceed in this particular video. So when I applied for my first Schengen visa, that's my French visa, it was refused, of course, right? But the visa reason made no sense to me. I believe they made a mistake. So of course I reapplied. I wrote a more detailed cover letter. I've actually talked about this in a different video. If you want me to explain this again, let me know in the comment section, and I'll make a different video telling you guys exactly my experience of applying for my first French visa. Now, of course, I reapplied and it got approved, right? But the truth of the matter is that a lot more persons applies to countries like France, Spain, Italy, Denmark. A lot more persons apply for these countries because they are more well-known, so they actually have a lot more visa approval as opposed to those other countries like Lithuania, Latvia, and stuff. So if you ask me today and say, Gerald, what's the easiest Schengen visa for you to get as a first-time traveler to the Schengen area, I would actually put France on top of my list before I get to maybe Spain, Italy, Portugal, and all of these other countries. That's me personally, right? And I'm telling you this with data, because if 1,000 persons applies to France and they approve 400 visas, right? That's 40% approval rating. But then these are 400 visas approved. But if 100 persons applies to Iceland or Lithuania and they get 90 approved, right? That's a 90% approval rating. So you would think that a lot more persons, but that's not the truth. These are 90 persons that got approved, just 90, as opposed to the 400 that got approved for a French visa. So my advice would be to actually go for a French visa. Now, this low approval rating is not really because France is tougher to get a visa from, though. It's because way more persons are actually applying for this country. So of course, if a lot more persons are applying for it, the approval rating is going to be low, percentage-wise, right? So smaller embassies might receive a few applications per year, often from people who are already experienced travelers or invited by companies. that naturally would increase the approval rating percentage-wise. But it doesn't mean that they actually issue more visas. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. If you are confused, let me in the comment section. I will not hesitate to actually make another video and actually explain all of this thing, maybe in a short video or something, for those of you guys who are confused. So instead of you paying attention to approval rating percentage-wise, there are 3 things I think you should pay attention to. Number 1 is number of applications processed by that country. So you need to actually pay attention to how many persons are actually applying for visas for this particular country. So do not pay attention to just percentage. The number of applications processed by that country is important. That's one. The number 2 thing you need to pay attention to is accessibility. Where can you actually apply? Now, there's a lot of Schengen visas that do not have embassies in your country. So their applications are actually channeled to other countries. For instance, I know that there are countries that don't have an Iceland embassy, right? I don't even sure my own country has. I'm sure that a country that doesn't have a Lithuania or Estonia. Okay, Estonia, for instance. For Estonian visas, you have to either apply in Turkey or in South Africa, right? So I know somebody that went to do his master's in Estonia. He had to travel to Turkey to get his visa, right? So you have to get a Turkish visa, travel to Turkey, go to the embassy in Turkey and get your visa. Then from Turkey, he now had to go to Estonia. So before you actually go to the embassy, you are prepared to travel to Estonia, right? Some of these countries do not have embassies in your country, so that becomes another thing that you need to pay attention to, right? So they don't accept applications locally. Now, the 3rd thing is purpose of travel. What is the reason why you are traveling, right? What is the reason? In reality, countries like France, Italy, and Spain process thousands of Schengen visas every year, a lot more than all of these other countries. So by that, they actually issue a lot more visas than these other ones. That is the truth, right? France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, the well-known Schengen countries, a lot more persons are applied to these countries as opposed to these other smaller, not so well-known countries, right? Like when you actually want to choose the country you want to travel to in the Schengen area, you need to pay attention to the purpose of your travel. Now, let me give you guys this story that happened here in my office. So this young lad reached out to us, booked a consulting session with me, because he was applying for a Denmark visa, right? Yeah, a Denmark visa. So it was a Schengen visa, of course, and it was a tourist visa, So he was applying and he reached out to us and booked a consulting session. When I was talking to him, I asked him his age. He said he was 23 years old. And I said, what do you do for work? He just finished NYSC. He just finished university rather. And he was waiting for national service here in Nigeria. What do you do for work? He owns an online business that earns him about $7,000 every month. So he had money, right? Then he just finished from University of Lagos. He read pharmacy. He was doing his internship in EMSO Pharmaceuticals. He's the Secretary General of Young Nigerian Association of Pharmaceuticals, something like that, right? And he was going to Denmark for a pharmaceutical conference. I smiled because he was qualified for a visa, to the Denmark visa. When I actually heard all of these things, of course, I had to ask him questions to understand the circumstances and tell him whether he was qualified or not to actually get that visa, right? Because when you're applying for a Schengen visa, there are 4 basic things you need to pay attention to. If you actually have a Schengen visa refusal, it is either 1 or 2 or 3 or all of these 4 things that was the reason why your visa was refused. So when we are doing Schengen visa application for clients, we pay attention to these things. Number 1 is justification of purpose, reliability or justification of purpose, right? The reason why you are traveling, is it justified? In this young man's case, the purpose of his travel was justified. So in the cover letter, I wrote the fact that he is a pharmacist. He is a member of an organization. He was going for an international pharmaceutical conference, which he has paid for and he has the ticket. It was his first visa ever and he has never left Nigeria, right? So I made the argument to justify the purpose of his trip to Denmark. That's one. Then the second thing was proof of subsistence. How do you make money? Do you have money? Can you fund your trip? Do you have money to fall back on when you return to your home country, right? So this young man has an online business that makes him about $7,000 every single month. So I now took my time to explain the fact that he owns this business, and as at the time he was making this application, he had about $18,000 in his bank account, like in cash, So I made all of these arguments to actually explain that he has money and he has money to come back to, not just for the trip, money to actually come back to in Nigeria, and a business that is robust, his economic ties. I had to stress it in that cover letter, right? So the next thing is your authenticity of supporting document or the veracity of the things that it contains, right? So that's the third thing. And I took my time to explain how we got all the documents that he was submitting and how it can be independently verified. So the fact that his bank statement has bank contact details, they can actually verify that easily if they want to. So we explain all of these things in the cover letter. Now, last but not the least, intention to return to your home country, intention to leave the member state, right? They want to actually be convinced that you're going to be leaving their country and coming back to your home country at the expiration of your visa. So I took my time to mention the fact that he has a business that earns him 7,000 times 12 a month every year. So that's exactly how much he makes in this business. This is an online business which has a very little overhead, no office. He pays his staff like 2 or 3 persons, a little amount of money. So all the monies are his to keep. He has landed properties all over Lagos and Ogun State, right? We had to present just 2 land documents for all of this. We mentioned the fact that he was waiting to go for his NYSC, which is his national service, and a whole lot of arguments. These are proof that he's going to come back to his home country, right? And of course, that visa was approved. That was his first visa ever, and it was approved. So the purpose of your trip is actually very important. It can determine where you are applying to. There was another lady that came to us. She wanted to go on vacation with her children, right? And I said, pick France, because there's a Disney World in France that you can actually, in Paris, that you can actually go to, for your kids. So we can make the argument that you are taking your kids to Disney World and you pay for a Disney World ticket, and we can use it to apply for that particular visa. Justification of purpose. So it matters where you are applying to. So the purpose of your trip would actually determine the country that you apply to at the end of the day. And yes, if you get a visa for Paris, as for instance, I've always been to Europe, and most times I've always traveled with a French visa. So I get to Paris and I can go to wherever else I want to go, right? So again, in reality, countries like France, Italy, Spain process thousands of applications every year, and thousands still get approved. So you are more likely to get a visa approved when you apply to France, Spain, Italy. So look, like I said before, if you are serious about getting a Schengen visa, don't just chase country with the highest approval rating. Chase a country where you have a legitimate reason to visit. That's one, right? Number 2, the country that you are choosing has a clear and accessible visa process in your country of residence. That's 2. Then number 3, and ideally, where you can show strong ties to return after your trip. Choose a country where you can actually show that you have strong ties for this other country to return. So you have to have strong ties to either your country of residence or your country of origin, because I understand the fact that you could be applying from a country that you don't live in. So this is actually what gets you a Schengen visa, not picking a random country that you see online, because publications on Google says that it's easier to actually get a visa to those countries. So next time you actually see a topic that says top 5 easiest Schengen countries, right? Ask yourself, easier for who? Exactly. Because it could be easier for me, right, because of my purpose, and it will not be easier for you because of your purpose as well, right? This is why I actually prefer, as a matter of fact, every client I have must book a consultation with me personally, because I understand that our circumstances are different. So I need to talk to you personally to understand your circumstances before I can actually move forward to helping you with your visa application and the cover letter and all of those things. So I need to talk to you first. That is why if I hadn't spoken to that young man, I wouldn't have understood his circumstances, and it would have been a problem, So, but because I spoke with him and I asked the right question, which is what happens in my consulting session, I will talk to you, ask you the right questions, and determine whether you are qualified for the visa or not. There are persons that come to me and I say, don't apply, you're not qualified for this visa. As a matter of fact, there's this lady from Thailand that booked a consulting session with me. She was just refused a UK visa. And while I was talking to her, I told her, don't reapply. You're going to be getting another refusal. That's the truth. But while we were talking, she mentioned something spectacular, that her mom had an Italian passport. And I asked her certain questions, and I discovered that she is actually an Italian citizen, but she didn't know it, based on the Italian law that I'm aware of. For what she explained to me, she actually qualified for an Italian passport. So of course I advised her to get an immigration lawyer, travel to Italy, meet your mom, get an immigration lawyer, and get an Italian passport. It shouldn't take her. She can get a PR maybe like a few months, right? And like a year or so, she can get a passport, and she can travel to the UK, without having to apply for a visa, right? So most agents will not tell you that. They will actually collect money for you to reapply for a visa that they are aware that you can never get because you're not qualified to actually get a visa. We don't do that at No Agent Travel Guide. We don't. That is why we actually talk to you in a consulting session to understand your circumstances and advise you what your chances are if you should apply, or reapply, or not apply at all for now, and the things that you need to do so you can actually apply in the future and have a lot more chances at getting your visa approved. So if you want to book a consulting session, what you need to do is to click on the first link that is pinned in my comment section below. Once you click on it, it's going to bring you to noagenttravelguide.com. Click on book consulting session just below the video on the screen, and it's going to take you to Seller where you actually make payment. And after payment, you'll be directed to my WhatsApp number and we can have a conversation about your visa application, be it Schengen, UK, Canada, whatever it is that you are interested in. You can actually talk about it and figure out the next step forward. And if you want to actually apply for a French visa yourself, this video showing up right here will show you guys exactly how to get it done.